This is Pick Up the Mic podcast on WWMVLP 95.5 and Radio 22. This is Pick Up the Mic podcast. I'll be your host, Corey Whitmore. This podcast aims to bring new voices into the conversation about how to eliminate racial disparities in education in the Madison Metropolitan School District. Over the past couple of months, we've had numerous interviews with African-American high school juniors and seniors, principals, teachers, mental health therapists to give us more perspective on how we start this conversation and how we find potential solutions. Here in episode 8, we're going to continue with our fresh perspectives, our interviews with community leaders. Last week, we had the chance to talk to Dr. Rennie Briggs, and this week we'll be able to talk to Marilyn Ruffin, former school board member in Sun Prairie, also VP of Family and Community Initiatives at One City Schools in Madison, also was a substitute teacher in the Madison School District. So we're very excited to be able to have her as part of this Pick Up the Mic podcast, and we really want to tap into her perspectives at different levels and different viewpoints. Like I said, from a school board member, from a substitute teacher, from a VP. With Family and Community Initiatives over at One City Schools. So she brings a wealth of knowledge. In my time in the Sun Prairie School District, in which my boys attend, she has been a champion for students of color and Black students. It was an incredible opportunity to be able to catch up with her and be able to talk through some of these issues. Let's jump into our interview with Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin.
Marilyn Ruffin, school board member since 2015. Prior to that, I spent 22 years in the field of engineering, a white male-dominated field. As a woman engineer, that was challenging, but was able to stay in that field for 22 years. And the reason why I left it, I was in between jobs and in between interviews. And I said, you know what? I came across a posting in Sun Prairie, been a Sun Prairie resident since 2009. Mm-hmm. After 20 years in Madison. I'm originally from St. Louis. My husband and I from St. Louis. So we've been in Wisconsin for 30 years, amazingly. So I was in between interviews, came across Sun Prairie needing substitute teachers. And I'm like, okay, this beats sitting around in front of the computer waiting to see if I'm gonna get an interview or not for my engineering job. So I just said, why not substitute teach? I had just read the Race to Equity report with Colleen Kerr, the Urban League. That was in 2013, 2014, around that time frame. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna go undercover and see what it's like out in the classroom. So I substitute taught in Sun Prairie, started in 2014. Mm-hmm. And the faces of our babies seeing me in front of the classroom is like unbelievable. The smiles, the energy, all that came into play. And I came to realize that never underestimate the power of seeing someone that looks like you in front of the classroom. And my experience with them was so wonderful in the sense that I shared my experiences at a PTO meeting. And from that standpoint, someone talked to me and said, you know what, you should run for school board. At that time, I said, I don't know anything about school board. What are you talking about? Well, I've came to realize it's not who you know, it's who you know who knows people. Because I didn't know 10 people in Sun Prairie at that time. So how in the world am I going to run for school board and get 100 signatures in this progressive town here of Sun Prairie that's lily white? So I must admit, I had 48 hours to get it done, meaning I came in at the last minute and I said, what's the worst that can happen? I just lose, it's a good learning experience. And then I said, what's the worst that can happen? Oh my God, I might just win this. So people rallied behind me and got those signatures out and the code of weather. And I got on the ballot. And next thing you know, I got elected on the school board in 2015, the first person of color ever elected in this city of Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. That was in 2015. Then I was able to hand my oldest son, his graduation diploma in 2015. So what an honor that was to hand that to him. I re-ran in 2018 for the mere fact I wanted to hand my younger son his high school diploma. Luckily, blessedly, I won that re-election too in 2018. So I became the first person ever of color to run twice and to be elected twice. And so that's for a 3-year term. It ends in 2021 in April. So this is perfect timing. And I am not seeking another term. So after 6 years, a lot that has happened along those lines. When I first got on the school board in Sun Prairie, I was told I could no longer substitute teach. And I said, oh my God, why did y'all tell me that? Well, I guess that's a conflict of interest. You can't work in the district that you're going to govern. So I said, okay, I'll take my talents to Madison. Mm-hmm. So that's how I wind up substitute teaching in Madison. So I was a school board member in Sun Prairie, substitute taught in Madison, basically kept on the east side of Madison because I'm live near Sun Prairie. I'm in Sun Prairie. So I spent a lot of time at East High School, West High School, the elementary schools, the middle schools on east side. Mm-hmm. And I never forgot an opportunity. One time I taught, it was a high school math class, algebra. And this Black boy came in the classroom and he immediately came up there and hugged me. He said, you just made my day. When he realized I was going to be his substitute teacher, I didn't know him for no one else. I thought maybe it was one of my son's friends from playing basketball. I didn't know, but that he came to me, gave me a hug and sat down. I had no issues. I had no trouble. As a matter of fact, as a substitute teacher, I barely had any instances of discipline or having to send someone to the office or anything like that. I was just being me, being cool. And I repeat myself, never underestimate the power of someone seeing you who looks like you in a leadership position. So I managed to stay substitute teaching until I got tapped on the shoulder by Kaleem Care. I've known Kaleem and his family for years. And he said, I'm starting, with One City Schools. I want you to be able to come and be the role that I'm in there now as a family and community initiatives. And I remember at the time I said, but Kaleem, I'm an engineer. I'm in between jobs. What am I going to do at a school? I'm an engineer, but he saw something in me. And it wound up being a great fit for me because I do a lot of community work, and then being on the school board, why not go into this role professionally as far as being, as far as my career. So I've now been with One City Schools, started off as director of family and community initiatives. And then 3 years later, I was promoted to VP of Family and Community Initiatives at One City Schools. And you're right, I get to see both ends of what I see as a school board member. And I used to say, man, if we can just get to our families early on and empower them, then we wouldn't have what we're having right now with high school students at some point in another. And with One City Schools, being an innovative public charter school just really gives me an opportunity to shine. And I see the conflict of, okay, you work for a charter school, but yet you're governing a public school district. So I get it on both ends along that line. So that is a lot about me in good 10 minutes, if that helps.
That is perfect. That is perfect. And it just reinforces the reason why I'm interviewing you. So thank you. I'm actually going to start with something that you mentioned, and then kind of go into some of the other questions, because that was with the students, we talked about the importance of having, faculty, whether it's counselors,
Right.
whether it's teachers that look like you.
Yep.
So can you expound upon that and tell us, why is that important and what is the impact on Black students to have, whether it is a counselor, a teacher there in the school that looks like them?
As was mentioning earlier, just the feeling of knowing someone shares your experiences or possibly shares your experiences. The example that I shared earlier about the high school student coming up and hugging me, maybe I reminded him of someone or remind me of a family member. I also remember another instances where I was substitute teaching in a high school, and the two girls saw me when they coming into the classroom, they know they got a substitute teacher, and then they saw me, and I heard them mumble under their breath, "Dang, I guess I ain't gonna be able to get away with XYZ." I guess I'm not going to be able to get away. You see what I'm saying? So it's a reminder, and it's the feeling of saying, okay, don't mess with her. Right. She ain't playing. Okay, so that shows the high expectations. Okay, I can't get away with this. I got to do my work. And it's just so key. It's the relationship building. It's the feeling of that shared experiences once again, and that you see someone in power and in front of the classroom. Yeah, we have a lot of our staff that nothing wrong with being a counselor and special education student and lunchroom and playground duties, but something about being in front of the classroom, not just for our Black students, but our white students too. Oh my goodness, our white students need to be able to see us in a position of power. And if they don't, they have that superiority complex that all people that's in leadership positions must only be white. And you can't have that. And if they wouldn't know unless they see it. So that's why you need more of us in those roles. And by being at One City Schools myself, our babies see us, our parents see us, the community sees us. And so with One City Schools, we have probably the highest diversity rate of staff of color, if you want to use that terminology, there at One City.
You touched on something that's interesting that I don't think that I thought of, but necessarily our line of questioning wasn't directed towards that because I was, mainly speaking with students. But you just emphasized the importance of parents.
Yes.
As well, seeing you. What is that impact like? What have those relationships been? Because at One City, you guys do have such a diverse coalition. What's the impact of that? Because that's something that I definitely want to emphasize in here that we necessarily didn't tackle with the students.
That parent engagement, that is my role there at One City, empowering them that they have a voice. So at One City Schools, they even take control of the parent meetings. So your monthly parent meetings is not run by us, it's run by them. And we get to be guests. We get to be guests at their meetings. We don't have any issue with parent teachers conference. They all come out, and it's just so key, the welcoming. Oh my gosh, just feeling welcome at the school. They see me and they see our front staff, who's a Black woman, and we call them all our babies. Y'all just leaving y'all babies here. And so the parents feel good. We have been open since September 1 throughout this pandemic because our families wanted, and they feel supported, and they feel safe in having their children with us. So to be perfectly honest, I don't even think I was in a pandemic at the school because all of us are one big family in the sense of we taking care of ourselves. We're making sure we use the safety protocols for the school and outside the school, because they know it's a privilege to be able to be at the school. And so they're doing what they need to do outside of the school so their children can stay with us and remain with us each day. So that's been phenomenal. So the parents is key. We utilize a program, a family engagement program called FAST, Families and Schools Together. And that gives parents an opportunity to meet with other parents and realize that they are not alone in feeling the way they feel when it comes to child rearing, or just being able to connect with another parent, because all the parents have the children around the same age. So I can see that being built up for the middle school and high school, to have that connection with another parent to go and talk with. And so when you talk about the parents, there's no judgmental here. We're here to work with you. We're here to assist you, and we welcome and we love on all the babies. We love them all on there. And so they're used to seeing me, and I'm used to seeing them, and you built that relationship and that connection, and it's so key.
Right. And what grades at One City, what grades do you guys host?
Yes, right now we are at second grade. So we have two schools. We operate two schools into one. Okay. We have a preschool that starts at age 2 and 3 years old. We specifically say preschool because if you want a daycare, you go to daycare. We are preschool, preparing our students for the success of school. And so 4K starts our charter school, and charter school being that it's tuition free. So we're the only entity out here that offers all day, full day preschool for 4K. You're not going to find that here in Madison. Typically in Madison is half days or 3 days a week. No, we are full day. So we go up to second grade, and this fall we're adding 2 more grades, third and fourth grade. Oh, so wow. We are authorized through the UW to go up to 6th grade. And we are already in the plans of going from middle school to high school. So we're talking about going from cradle to college in the south side of Madison.
That's amazing.
Not too long afterwards.
That's amazing.
Yes, thank you. So I handle the register. So I handle the registration as well for our One City schools.
The one thing that I'm hearing that's kind of shining through that I haven't heard in other conversations is that there's a buy-in from the parents, and it seems as if it's more of a partnership. That's right. Than one, just leaning on the other.
That is correct. Oh my God, you just nailed it right there. And may I say that in Sun Prairie, I'm not seeing that in our school district. It's just not, I don't see that. And so you're right. I go between Madison to Sun Prairie, from the school district to One City schools. And when I hear, Sun Prairie saying, I don't know why we can't get no parent involvement. And I'll be like, and I'm got 100% over here because we partner, because it's a huge thing to have our parents as partners in the education of their children.
Right.
Scholars. We call them scholars.
Wonderful.
There you go. There's another word right there. Yes, there you go. Because representation means a lot, and words are important too. So they are all starting at 2 years old. Right. You're a scholar. You're a scholar. You are a scholar.
Thank you, Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. Normally if you've been listening to the podcast, normally we start with the achievement gap and what is it and what do you know about it, and we'll move into testing and standardized testing and things of that sort. But as this conversation started, I started to see a lot of things starting to come up about community, and I didn't want to deviate from that and wanted to kind of stay on that and get her perspective. And 3 words that kind of stuck out to me as we were talking was family, partners, and empowerment. And it was interesting how she explained the, in essence, partnership between One City schools and the parents, of how they come in and run the meetings, that it does feel like a family. And I think a critical aspect of that is the diversity that One City schools has in their faculty. So, no matter who you are, you see yourself in faculty, much like the students. I believe episode 4, when we were talking about the importance of Black teachers, wanted to see themselves in the staff in the schools in which they attended, and they were not able to see that. As one student put it, sometimes when you don't see yourself reflected in staff, it's hard. If you need help, it's kind of hard to ask for that help. And it may be the same with teachers and parents. You know, when you don't see a teacher or an administrator that looks like you may be hesitant. Not all people, because I know people that aren't hesitant. No matter who you are, what color you are, I'm gonna tell you what's on my mind. But for some people, they may be hesitant in expressing how they feel or talking about change that they would like to see within the school, for whatever reason. So, you know, this goes back to representation. Once again, you know, the kids hit it hit the nail on the head. But this also connects to episode 6 when we talk about the role of community and how important that can be in trying to close this achievement and opportunity gap. When the community feels empowered, as this is one of those words I took from that, if the community feels that they are in partnership with the school and it feels as if it's a family atmosphere, now you have not just the school district trying to, you know, close this gap, but you have the community working in unison with the school district to do that as well. That's why those relationships are so important, and how you go about fostering those relationships and how you interact with the community is incredibly important. I would love to have a team of people working to solve a problem than just a few. So I found that very interesting in this first part of the interview with Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. But we got more to come, so don't go anywhere. We are going to have more of these, more parts to this interview with Marilyn Ruffin coming up right after this. Welcome back. You are tuned in to Pick Up the Mic podcast with your host, Corey Whitmore. This is episode 8, Fresh Perspectives. We are sitting down with former school board member Marilyn Ruffin, and we are talking about the achievement gap and opportunity gap. So let's hear more from Marilyn Ruffin. Yeah, the buy-in, and you know, even from my own perspective and my own experience, when we moved to Sun Prairie, our oldest now went to Horizon when Rainey Briggs was principal. Yep. And it's for me, it was a different feeling that, you know, I knew if something was going on, he was going to let me know.
There you go.
And he was going to hold them to the standard that I would hold them to. And to have that comfort to say, hey, there's somebody, you know, looking over my son.
That's right.
And know that they will challenge him and not let them get away with stuff. Makes you feel that much better. Just about the experience in general, makes you feel a little bit more full.
You read about that, but when I experienced that as a substitute teacher, hearing these teenage girls mumble under their breath, doggone, I guess we can't get away with it. Right.
Not today, at least.
Not today. No, they ain't happening here. I knew I struck something then. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's incredible the minor impacts of diversity can have.
That's right.
The small things.
Don't underestimate that power of what that does to a child. Yes, correct.
All right, let's move. We'll kind of visit this again, but you know, I kind of have a little bit of an order which I want to go in. So we'll kind of get a little bit back to this. But you had mentioned that, you know, you kind of almost went undercover. Yes. And you're talking about the Race to Equity initiative.
Yes.
I've been asking everybody. Everybody seems to have a different point of view of what this achievement gap really is and what it means to them. Right. So I think I want to start with the achievement gap, you know, specifically now speaking in Madison. What do you know about it? And when you hear achievement gap, what does that mean to you?
Good question on there. I really look at it more of an opportunity gap, the opportunity of what one set of families versus another set. Divided line really between our Black and white families, if you want to be more specific. Yes, the opportunities. And we can use this pandemic as a huge example of what it meant when families, when this, oh my goodness, we're a year now into the pandemic, and what it meant this time last year, where everything had to shut down, the schools shut, the state shut down, and you're at home in a sense, and had to learn from home. And then you start learning about the access of being able to have reliable internet access to learn or educationally over the computer. And you learn about the access of who has that freedom or have that opportunity to sit in a quiet space to learn versus not having that space to learn. And it really opened up what it meant to have a roof over your head. You make the assumption that when students come into your classroom, that they have the basic needs met, and you learn that that's not always the case with food insecurity and housing insecurity. You really get to find out, you really get to know the opportunity gaps that is widened because of what occurred specifically with this pandemic for all, or even having parents having the capability to work from home as opposed to being an essential worker where you have to be out in retail stores, for example, or at the grocery stores or so, and not being there next to your child to help them with the assignments or the work. I mean, with Sun Prairie in the headline in the news now with the incident at Patrick Marsh Middle School with the history lesson gone bad, terribleness, and that would this have happened if we were all in person? It just opened up the eyes of, okay, your child is trying to learn at home and this assignment comes up and you can ask your mom, who so happening was right there, to say, Mom, does this assignment look right? What kind of question is this? Would this have happened if we were in person? And that brings up another whole host of questions looking at our curriculum. Like, okay, let's see. Can't tell me this was the first time this has happened. No, this is the first time this has happened where someone is questioning you while you're at home, working from home. So when we talk about the achievement gap, I would look at it more as the opportunity gap, and then just making sure that what our students are learning is more culturally relevant so that you can get a grasp of understanding more than what's been in these books that even when I was a child that I never thought was a lot appropriate. That's another whole story in itself on here. So that whole achievement gap could be something that just wasn't right from the get-go.
Right.
So it's the opportunity, and that's how I feel, how it's been.
And it's funny that you use, that titling of opportunity gap, because there's a young man from East that I was talking to that used that exact same terminology and speaking about this. And he, in his opinion, he corrected me right away to say, I know that you're asking me about an achievement gap, but I believe that it's an opportunity gap, and here's why.
That's right. Good deal.
I want to move into environment, and we kind of touched on that earlier, talking about the importance of having, a teacher that looks like you. I'm going to read a quote to you that, do I have where I took that quote from? It was in an article about 6 years ago. I'm not sure if it's the Isthmus or the Cap Times, but I'm going to read this quote to you, and I want you to, give your thoughts on the quote and speak to if you've seen something like this in school. So it's a quote from a paper interviewed two black high school students from Memorial a few years ago. I won't use their names, but I'll just read around it.
Yep.
The quote says, when Madison Memorial High School sophomore X solves problems in his head, other students give him surprised looks. He believes it is because he is black. Quote, I just pay attention in class and do my work, he said. Another Memorial High School junior echoed the same feeling, saying, people don't expect you to know anything, he explained. Student X is a high academic performer, plays on the high school soccer team, and is active in Memorial's Black Student Union. And quote, it's almost as if you know something that they think you're weird or you're acting white. Some people think you're not black just because you try to help yourself out and do well in school. End quote. What are your thoughts on that? And have you seen anybody have that similar experience?
Acting like you don't know what they're asking? Was that what you're saying?
He said, let me go back and read this. It says it's almost as if you know something. They think you're weird or you're acting white. Some people think you're not black just because you try to help yourself out and do well in school.
Boy, that terminology or that saying of acting white been around for a minute now, because I remember that growing up in high school for sure. And makes you wonder what in the classroom.
So why I'm putting this out there is I'm trying to speak to, what is the experience? What is the learning environment? What may be contributing to whether it is lower graduation rates, lower test scores, even though we know that those tests are biased, or are kids just losing interest and dropping out? I'm trying to speak to, what is the learning environment like? And it may be something that you have not seen, in your time as a substitute teacher or anything like that. But I did want to put it out there and see if you had a response or any thoughts on it.
Okay, we could be stereotyping. Could the thought process be, in the age of social media or just on TV? If you don't see, then you don't believe. And if you don't believe, you can't achieve. So others may be looking at that and saying, well, this is an African-American child and we're not used to him knowing something.
Right.
We're used to always in trouble. You see it in the media. Next thing you know, in the newspaper. And what faces do you see when there's some crime going on here? Because it starts way back, like right now, like in high school. And doggone it, I see that when it comes to expulsion hearings, and you act like that our students are not smart enough or not feeling like they are worthy enough to be in the classroom. And so again, I use social media as a detriment sometimes, many times, where you get to see, or white folks may just say, see us in a negative light. And if you don't see enough of us in our brilliance, then that stereotype comes in. And so when that quote saying, they act like I didn't know, when I say I know the answer, and act like, what, he actually said that?
Right.
What you expect? Turn the TV off. Turn the TV off and realize that, yes, we have our own brilliance. And so our teachers, specifically our administration, need to see that and know that we are capable, just like all the other students.
All right. Thank you for that, Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. Another issue that was just touched upon here that I think came up in episode 4, I believe it's episode 4, possibly episode 3, when we were discussing code switching with the students and why they engage in it. And, do you find yourself exhausted always having to do that? And the reason why kids, and I believe almost everybody we interviewed said, yes, I engage in some sort of code switching daily at school, is because they aren't sure of the perspective that teachers and administrators have of them. They feel that, and many of them feel that, I need to change my identity into something that seems more acceptable to you, because I don't want you to stereotype me as something that you've seen, as Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin put it, on TV or on social media or in the news, in which it's a negative reflection upon those that look like me. So it's hard for kids to step into places in which, as we said in the beginning part, where they are not reflected in the administration or in the faculty, and feel comfortable, because they are unsure of how you view them. If you are viewing them without speaking to them, without knowing them, without knowing their family, are you viewing them in a negative light? Or are they actually on a level playing field where you are going to let them show you who they are, and then you're going to make that evaluation? It makes it incredibly hard and creates an incredible amount of anxiety when students don't know how they'll be judged. So, I'm glad that we, Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin spoke to that, and as we've kind of on and off talked about, reflection and diversity and faculty, another reason why that is so important. A student going into a classroom, new teacher, has enough anxiety to deal with meeting new people, being in a new environment and things like that, without having to also worry about how the teacher is viewing me. And I haven't said anything, I haven't spoke a word, you haven't talked to my family or anything, and you may already be viewing me negatively, and I have to try and work against that. That is just a weight that is unneeded, and can hinder growth and confidence in some of these students. So that's something to be aware of. We are going to take another break here, and after this break, we are going to continue with more of the interview with Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. You are tuned in to Pick Up the Mic podcast with your host, Corey Whitmore. This is episode 8, Fresh Perspectives. We are talking with Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. And let's go ahead and jump right back into that interview. And you speak to you speak to a predetermined stereotype, especially when it comes to Black students. And you had mentioned expulsions and suspensions, and what is feeding such disproportionate numbers of Black students being suspended and receiving expulsion from these schools?
Biases. Our teachers are mostly our white teachers, coming from a district that is, now we probably 80% white, and having more students, Black and brown students in Sun Prairie. I'm use that for an example. I just see it being biases, and that they never had any real interaction with our students. Or they coming from districts or coming from hometowns where they don't see us in a positive light. There goes that social media, there goes the media itself, and seeing us, stereotype of Blacks specifically. And so I just look at the incidences. I'll even use the school to prison pipeline, having SROs at the schools, and teachers calling upon these resource officers, student resource officers, more often than necessary. And then having this zero tolerance of behavior, which put an infraction on our students to turn around to get points taken away from them, and then being sent to the principal's office, and then getting these referrals. And the next thing you know, as a school board member, I'm looking up and we're told that we got to come in for an expulsion hearing. And in my back of my mind, I'm like, please let it not be. Please let it. Please don't let it be. Let it be. And he's like, oh my God, not another Black family, not another Black boy, not another Black girl again. And so when you hear the stories, you hear the stories, all of them have a common theme. No different than when I was a little kid, you do fights. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's, social media, they said this, they said that. Right. All of it was just BS, in my opinion. BS. I think that there should be a step between having this present to us as a school board to expel, and then going back to the teachers themselves on why is it that you couldn't handle this student in the classroom? Must this been instances that you had to refer them to the principal? Must it had been this? I think that there should be different programs put into place for at schools, because we've been doing the same thing for so long. And how's that working for you? It's working against our Black and brown students, because they are the ones that are getting the most of the suspension rates. Mm-hmm. So you got to acknowledge the problem and do differently and change differently. These are just kids. They're right. Kids. They're kids. They're 16, 17 years old. I'm talking about specifically high school. Mm-hmm. And so this can be changed around. And so why put it on them that they're not doing right? Well, how about you, adult? How are you interacting with them? You're the adult here. So you have to change the trajectory of why this suspension rates are high enough, and it looks bad on us. And so changing my other hat to one city schools and starting off with our families early on, and working with our students early on, so that by the time they reach up to us, as far as, middle and high school, we can knock down all those infractions by just building the relationship with our family, starting off at the beginning. And so there's the difference right there with the teachers. If they don't have a good relationship with the students and being out in the community, that's another big thing that we at One City Schools, our babies, they get to see us out in the community, outside of the four walls. So when you talk about our teachers right now, how often are they interacting with our families and building that relationship outside of those four walls and getting to know them, so that, God forbid, incident comes up, you can say, I already know this family. I already know what's going on here. We don't need to be going down this road here for suspensions and up. We can handle this. That's the issue.
It feels, and tell me if this analogy is a little off. It almost feels like healthcare in this country, from the sense that, we wait to get sick. And then we try to do this last minute treatment to try and fix it, instead of being proactive.
That's a good one.
Throughout your health.
Right.
If you know that you have a history of high blood pressure, what are you doing? What are the steps that you're continuously doing to make sure that doesn't become a problem?
That's right.
And it seems like being proactive on the front end can help prevent disaster on the back end.
There you go. Or help alleviate it, or help reduce it quite a bit. No doubt about that.
I do have a question in that process of the suspensions. So yes. When a teacher, when an incident happens, and a teacher writes it up and says that, this student needs to be, suspended or, expelled or whatever. Right. Are they a part of any other process, and after writing that person up and saying, here's my recommendation? Are they, do they have to meet with the parents at all?
Right.
Do they have to participate in something after that with the student if the student is coming back into school, or are they kind of done with the process after they make that?
No, because for us as school board members, they have a long, we have a list, unfortunately, that's how it's set up. But by the time it gets to us, as far as expulsion, they have already did in-school suspension. They've already done out school suspension, like 3 days, at home, working with the parents. I think they do a lot before it finally gets to us to say, all right, we're ready to expel them. Now, it surely depends on what the nature of, the infraction is in the first place on there. But by the time it gets to us, we don't want to kick out any students, but we do turn around and say, okay, well, in order to get back in, you got to do X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. The sad thing about it is many of our students who get expelled have already their grades have slipped so low that you having our students being expelled for a semester or a year or however, they can't come back to the following year. And you look at their academic records coming to us, and I'm like, why are we at this point right now? There should have been something done back when they was in the 7th grade, back when they was in the 5th grade, back to where I'm at one city schools, where I get to work with the families from 4K and up in 2nd grade and 3rd grade. Because when they get to us as high school and they're being expelled, I'm looking at, 0.5 GPA, 1.2 GPA. And I'm like, okay, we're here because you had this fight because you were mad about something on social media. Wait a minute. Let's go all the way back. Wait a minute. Why you got an F in this class here?
Right.
Why is your grades looking like this right now? So it should have been some intervention well before that we even got to this point of, because we get all their records and to make that determination of, okay, so how are we going to be able to support this student, if we expel them? What is their home life now? And then you start, unfortunately, you start hearing of the stories of what's going on at home and what's not going right at home. And then you start saying in your mind, well, doggone, we've already set him up for failing. And here we're getting ready to expel him. And what's going to happen? And this is where that prison, the pipeline goes. And now you turn around, they're not in school. So what they're going to do to get themselves in more trouble being outside of the school. And it's just a downward slope. And so you go back to saying, we got to have that relationship with these families early on so we don't go down this road and this path, and letting them know that they are smart and that they are brilliant, and letting our families know that, hey, let's build a relationship with each other and with other parents so you can talk to each other and realize that you're not the only one in this world of parenting. And those relationships, all that comes back down to just building relationships so that we don't get to this point of being where we are. I must admit, being in this pandemic, that's one thing I ain't got to worry about, is sitting in another expulsion hearing. That's one thing I ain't got to worry about is that one of our children is being suspended, because we've been all remote. And every year that I've been on the school board, it's been our children that's been brought up to being expelled.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin. This whole interview just echoes, all the different aspects that we've discussed, really up to date. And the thing from this section of the interview that's sticking with me is something that actually Mrs. LaShawn Sells Whitmore said about engaging youth early and really intervening and picking them up when we start to see them fall or go off track, and how important that is. And she really put a whole lot of emphasis on elementary school, and really making sure that kids aren't getting off track and they aren't falling behind in the beginning, because that's going to, manifest itself. It's going to show itself later in the journey. And to what Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin is speaking to is as a school board member, she had to sit in on these expulsion talks. And as she said, she's able to look at the records dating back to see grades, to see previous behavioral instances, and gets to dive into what's going on in the home life and all these things. By the time it reaches her, it's gotten to such a critical point that it's hard for them now to get back into the school system and try and make their way through to graduation. If you're getting now put out for a semester or putting out for a few weeks, but you have a 1.9 GPA or a 0.5 GPA or whatever it is, I mean, that hill is, I'm not going to say impossible, but incredibly difficult to climb out of. And you just wonder, and I think she wonders too, as we were talking, like, what if this was addressed sooner? What if somebody intervened a few years ago? Would it have escalated and gotten to this point where now they're before me, and we're making the decision of how long they're going to be away from school? And once again, relationships, faculty, students, community, school, it continues to highlight how important and vital that is, and how much of an emphasis schools really need to be putting on those relationships, because the strength of those relationships, family, partnership, empowering people to speak, having all those connector points, and not having only the school trying to problem solve, but the school, the community, the parents trying to problem solve this together, makes it easier on everybody. Helps reduce those gaps. Hopefully helps reduce our suspension and expulsion rates. All that can contribute to higher graduation rates for all students. So, we're hearing these themes repeat themselves and play out over and over and over again. Just because we hear the themes don't mean the application of what needs to be done is easy. So please don't think that, because we've had these themes pop up over and over in the episodes, that I automatically expect that, or someone automatically expects, the school should just be doing that. So why aren't they doing that? It's a good question to ask, but application is important, and who is able to see these themes and truly apply a plan to try and do this. It's not something that would happen overnight. So that is also important. But the first step, I believe, is having that let me go back. As Dr. Randy Briggs has put it many times, educate. So they need to recognize that there is a problem, and that these are the things that can help solve that problem. Recognition and knowing what it is really the first step. If you can get that far, then that next step is now, what is the game plan? How do we go about doing this? And are we going to invest the time needed to make this happen, because it is that important to us? So we're going to take one more quick break. We're almost at the hour. I'm going to squeeze in a little bit more of Marilyn Ruffin's interview right after this break. Welcome back to Pick Up the Mic podcast with your host, Corey Whitmore. This is episode 8 fresh perspectives with our interview with Marilyn Ruffin, and let's go ahead and dive right back into it. All right. I have one last question for you, which has been brought up by a number of students. I guess we're starting and ending in the same points, kind of talking about teachers and teachers of, Black teachers of color. I've heard a lot of different responses from different people in administration at different levels of why they believe they have not been able to hire, specifically here, more Black teachers.
Yep.
Why is it that you believe more Black teachers have not been hired, whether it is the Madison School District, the Sun Prairie School District? Why do you believe that hasn't happened? And how does that get fixed?
Oh my goodness. That's a loaded question right there. Why haven't our teachers, our Black teachers, been hired? Is that the question? Why
haven't more Black teachers been hired?
Man, I'm thinking they have a choice, that they have all these options to go to XYZ places to say, because they're hot demand.
Yes.
They are high demand on there, even at one city schools, even at one city schools on there. And we were like, just apply. It also makes me wonder about the license that they have to obtain. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing from Wisconsin, they got to go through all these hoops to get a license. And does that stop them for Wisconsin issuing the license? Mm-hmm. I would say at one city schools, we want the heart of the teacher and the brilliance of them bringing it out of our students more than saying, I need to have this Wisconsin license on your resume.
Right.
We want the heart and know that you are going to do what is necessary for the sake of our children here. Wisconsin, I say that even in our own school district, we managed to hire our next principal, if you know, that's for the new high school, a Black man from Illinois. So that's huge. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming to district, we got to go out and broad out of the state and go to our HBCUs if we have to recruit our teachers. And I know I made that a stickler because we as a district flew all over the place to check out what the next generation of high schools are as we were looking for and designing our current high school. So if we can do that, surely we can go out to see some HBCUs or go to the colleges where you have these teachers who are studying to be teachers and bring them on. And you have to go outside of the box. We've been doing the same thing over and over again and then wondering why we can't seem to recruit. And it's not even just about recruitment, it's about retention. Oh my God, that's huge. Yes. That's retention of our staff of color, our Black and brown staff. And if they don't feel valued and if they don't feel that they're supported, they will leave. And I'm quite concerned about our new principal that's coming into Sun Prairie for the new high school. And if we don't do it right and make sure that he is, because I will be off the board then, but I've made it known. I said, I want to be able to be there to welcome him to the district, to shake his hand and let him know that he can use me as a resource. If we don't do that supporting, he could be gone, just like Rainey Briggs. Rainey Briggs he was the principal, and just when I just started on the board, and I believe that he was trying to get into a higher position, and he didn't get it, and we lost him as a school district. We lost him, and now he's thriving at Middleton. Where is he?
Yes.
Middleton?
Yes,
and I see him every now and then at some conference or so, and it's always good to reconnect. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, dang, we let him go. We let him go, and why is that the case? And why, as a district, if that's supposed to be your high priority to obtain and keep That's huge. I'm also about that. What is it? Grow your own program. We can take some of our existing high school students who have a desire to go into teaching and put them under our wing, and help them get their certification and help them and wanting to stay in Sun Prairie, and so that they can be those resources and be that leader that we're looking for as far as teachers is concerned. And so it's about investment. You're going to have to put the money where your mouth is. Okay. You wanted it. So now here's an opportunity. So why are our Black teachers are not being hired? One, we want to make sure, I would like to know a listing. I would like to know that they want to come to Sun Prairie. And so you, for instance, or Madison or at One City Schools, again, it's all about not just having them there, but providing them the package of wanting them to take the chance to stay with us. And in order to do that, you have to have an attractive package that may be different than what you offer our white counterparts, our white teachers. You're going to have to, and because you already know the importance. Are you hoping that districts understand the role of what it means to have our Black and brown staff in front of our students to make that difference?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Marilyn Ruffin, for interviewing with us and being a part of this podcast. Your wealth of knowledge and experience. It came shining through. There was so many things that we were able to get to and talk about, and so many themes that came out. And we're forever grateful for you taking the time, but grateful for everything that you have done and are continuing to do. This concludes episode 8 of our Pick Up the Mic podcast. Make sure to check us out on social media at Pick Up the Mic podcast. That's on Instagram and Facebook. And I hope you guys enjoy the week. We are going to be back with episode 9, another fresh perspective and another exclusive interview next week. All right, everybody, have a great rest of the weekend and week, and we'll see you next Sunday.